Almost Famous flopped at the box office, and the studio was furious with the movie that they had made. But 6 months later, Cameron Crowe proved everyone wrong. Almost Famous turns 25 years old this month, so here's some things I bet you never knew about it. The story behind Almost Famous starts in the early 1970s in San Diego, where a teenage Cameron Crowe began writing for his high school paper, as well as a local music publication, the San Diego Door. Crowe then started corresponding with music journalist Lester Bangs, editor of Cream magazine, which led him to become a contributing writer for the rock publication. Crowe, who had skipped 3 grades as a boy, then graduated from high school at age 15 in 1972, and by the following year, he was a full-time writer at Rolling Stone in Los Angeles. His first cover story for Rolling Stone was about the Allman Brothers Band after spending 3 weeks on the road with them at the age of 16. Crowe wrote for the magazine until 1977, covering nearly every huge act of the era, but when Rolling Stone moved from LA to New York, he chose to stay in California. At age 22, Crowe got the idea to go undercover as a high school student and write a book about it. That became Fast Times at Ridgemont High, a true story. When Universal acquired the movie rights, Crowe was hired to write the screenplay, which officially made him a screenwriter. He'd go on to write and direct Say Anything, Singles, and Jerry Maguire. And then in the late 90s, he turned his attention to his own life story. He'd write a movie about a teenage rock journalist on the road with an up-and-coming band. Crowe was not trying to write a movie about the excess of 70s rock stardom, but instead one about friendship and the love of music. He told Rolling Stone in 2020, Almost Famous was falling in love with music at a young age, when you weren't sure who your friends would be in the world, but these records were your friends. And then you go out into the world and you actually meet people who love those same records who become your friends. It's an explosion of feeling like you belong, and that was the rudder on Almost Famous. The movie's fictional band, Stillwater, is a composite of a number of bands Crowe covered in the 70s. But in his 2012 memoir, Gregg Allman said that a lot of the movie was based on Crowe's travels with the Allman Brothers. He claimed that Russell jumping into the pool off of the roof was something that Dwayne Allman actually did. Quote, that was Dwayne who jumped from the 3rd floor of a place called the Travelodge in San Francisco. My brother wanted to do it again, but the cat who owned the place came out shaking his fist, yelling at him. We told that story all the time, and I have no doubt that Cameron was around for it. But Cameron Crowe also confirmed in 2020 that the Golden God line was inspired by Led Zeppelin lead singer Robert Plant, who had uttered that sentence on a Riot House balcony. Gregg Allman also wrote in his book that he and Dickie Betts played a joke on Crowe by claiming that their contract wouldn't allow his story to be published right before Crowe was supposed to deliver it to Rolling Stone. Cameron Crowe based the character of Penny Lane on the real Penny Lane Trumbull, who led a group of female music promoters called the Fly Garter Girls Group. Crowe based William's mother on his own mother, who reportedly showed up to the set of the movie to keep an eye on him. Crowe's mother and actress Frances McDormand, who was playing the mother, ended up getting along pretty well. Crowe thought that he had made up the band name Stillwater, but it turned out there was a real Stillwater band based in Georgia at the time, so the movie had to get permission and pay a fee to use that band's name. Peter Frampton served as a technical consultant on the movie. Crowe and his then wife Nancy Wilson of Heart co-wrote 3 of the 5 Stillwater songs in the film, while Frampton wrote the other 2, with Pearl Jam's Mike McCready playing lead on all of the tracks. 16-year-old Patrick Fugit was a complete unknown when he was cast in the film, and he didn't end up in the movie until late in the casting process after sending in a self-tape. Crowe had considered Joseph Gordon-Levitt for the part, but thought he was too old. Brad Pitt was originally going to play Russell Hammond, who was inspired by musician Glenn Frey, but during pre-production rehearsals, Pitt and Crowe realized it wasn't a good fit, so Billy Crudup ended up with the part. Sarah Polley was also supposed to play Penny Lane, but when Pitt dropped out, she did too, and was replaced by Kate Hudson, though Natalie Portman was also considered for the role. Jack Black and Jon Favreau both auditioned for Lester Bangs, which went to Philip Seymour Hoffman. Meryl Streep was considered for William's mother, which, as I said before, went to Frances McDormand. Alice in Chains member Jerry Cantrell was Crowe's first choice for Stillwater bassist Larry Fellows. The two of them are friends, and Cantrell was in Singles and Jerry Maguire, but he was busy making a solo record, so Mark Kozelek was cast instead. And elsewhere, this movie is a parade of people who would later become much more famous. I guess you could say at the time they were almost famous. Anyway, you've got minor appearances from Michael Angarano, Zooey Deschanel, Jimmy Fallon, Jay Baruchel, Rainn Wilson, Pauly Perrette, Eric Stonestreet, and Mark Maron. By the way, Mark Maron's Lock the Gates from his podcast intro music is a clip of his dialogue from Almost Famous. The movie also has cameos from Rolling Stone founder Jan Wenner, Peter Frampton, and Mitch Hedberg. At the time, Crowe had an overall deal with DreamWorks, so DreamWorks produced the movie and set the budget at $45 million. And filming began on May 24th, 1999. They filmed in LA, San Diego, and New York at famous rock history locations. Southern California locations included the University of San Diego High School, Balboa Park, San Diego Sports Arena for the opening concert, the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, the Hollywood Palladium, Chateau Marmont, and Western Dunes Motor Hotel. In New York, they shot at the Plaza Hotel, Gramercy Park Hotel, in Central Park, on the Queensboro Bridge. They shot the Golden Golden God pool party scene at a house in the San Fernando Valley. The house wasn't close enough to the pool, so they built a fake facade of a house closer to the pool. In a New York Times piece, Crudup recalled the roof being very steep and him being unsure of his footing up there. Crudup himself did not jump into the pool. He did a number of safer jumps onto a crash pad, and he almost missed the crash pad on his first take. Then his stunt person did the actual jump into the pool. William and Penny's lines in the Tiny Dancer bus scene, "I have to go home and you are home," were improvised on set. Crowe told Rolling Stone that that bus scene took several days to shoot, and everyone was sick of hearing Tiny Dancer by the end. Crowe even got in trouble with the producers in the studio for spending so much time on it. And speaking of Crowe being in trouble with the studio, according to an October 2000 article in the Los Angeles Times, Cameron Crowe and DreamWorks clashed during the production. He reportedly went a month over schedule and overspent on the budget by $15 million, bringing the total cost to $60 million. The newspaper says Crowe shoots reams of film and takes his time doing it. He pays excruciatingly close attention to every detail, obsessively recreating an exact replica of the old Rolling Stone offices, and meticulously costuming hundreds of extras in a crowd scene who were never shown in close-ups. Filming wrapped on October 6, 1999. Music was of course extremely important to the movie, so Crowe spent $3.5 million getting the rights to 50 songs by major artists. And Crowe personally flew to London to screen the movie for Led Zeppelin to get their permission to use their songs in the movie. They liked what they saw and allowed him 5 songs total. One ended up on the soundtrack with 4 others in the film as well. And this was the first time that Zeppelin allowed their music in a film since they let Crowe and Amy Heckerling put Kashmir in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Crowe wanted to get Stairway to Heaven in Almost Famous 2, but the band said no. Crowe then put that deleted scene on a special edition DVD and told the viewer the exact moment to sync up Stairway on their own stereo. Anyway, it seems during post-production, DreamWorks lost faith in the movie. That same LA Times article says studio executives were perturbed that they spent $60 million on an art film and Crowe's little personal movie. And so they, 1, sold off the international distribution rights to Sony, and 2, they seemingly undermarketed the film. An R-rated coming-of-age story like this was going to be a tough sell to begin with, and the movie didn't really have any major stars. But Crowe was a big-name director at the time. Jerry Maguire had made $273 million worldwide. So DreamWorks ends up premiering Almost Famous at the Toronto Film Festival, and then it did a platform release in limited theaters in New York and LA. It did just $6.9 million domestic that weekend, and it would go on to gross just $47 million total worldwide, falling short of making back its budget. And Crowe ended up taking his next movie, Vanilla Sky, to Paramount, by the way. But here's the thing, critics and audiences loved Almost Famous. Today, 91% of the 229 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. MetaCritic has it at a 90 based on 38 reviews. Roger Ebert gave it a perfect 4 out of 4 stars, calling it the best movie of 2000. And audiences gave it an A- CinemaScore in theater exit polls. At the Oscars, 6 months later, Almost Famous was nominated for 4 awards. Kate Hudson and Frances McDormand were both up for Best Supporting Actress. The movie was nominated for Best Editing, and Crowe was nominated for and won Best Original Screenplay. The movie also won 2 BAFTAs, 2 Golden Globes, and the Grammy for Best Compilation Soundtrack. Almost Famous would go on to become an instant classic and was ranked the 47th best film of the 21st century in a 2025 poll by the New York Times. Almost Famous also became a Broadway musical in 2022 with music by Tom Kitt and a book by Cameron Crowe himself. It was nominated for Best Original Score at the Tonys, but it got bad reviews and closed after just 77 performances total. Thanks for watching this video. If you've made it to the end, drop an "I'm a Golden God" in the comments, or if you're a WTFer, lock the gates. For more movie history deep dives, head to the attached playlist and check out my newsletter for the latest movie news.